Obviously, one of the most important things that a retail product inventor can concern themselves with is getting a licensing contract for their invention. Now, the industry has changed a lot over the years and moved towards people licensing their inventions versus taking them to market. And I think that's a good thing for most inventors. But if you're going to do that, you need to understand the processes of what you're doing. One of those is the eventuality that you will get a licensing contract. When you do, you need to pay attention to some very specific things in those contracts. Now, granted, this is not legal advice, and if you enter into a contract, you should have it checked with an attorney. They're going to be able to tell you the ins and outs of that particular contract. It's very important that you have contracts checked by attorneys so they can protect your interest. Generally speaking, a licensing contract has some very specific areas in it. So let's go through them. The first section of a licensing contract is the granting of rights, where the licensor, which is you, are now granting the rights to use or rent or manufacture or whatever that case may be to the licensee, which is the company who's interested in producing your product for the market. The term of agreement is very important. Section establishing the length of the agreement. Now that's really important in the sense that most companies want an agreement that's long enough to guarantee they can monetize their investment, but not too long that they're saddled with something that may not work. So a lot of licensing contracts will be 2 years, some of them 3 years. Rarely do you see a licensing contract over a 3-year limit, but that doesn't mean that doesn't happen. It just means that the norm is probably between 2 years and 3 years, and many contracts are done at 1 year if the product can be developed quickly and put on the market quickly. Quality control is a really important thing. You have to remember that a contract for licensing is, generally speaking, a temporary arrangement. So if this company is taking your widget, your idea, or your invention, and they're going to produce it for the market, you are forever tied to the quality of the product that they're producing. So you need to ensure that there's a mechanism in the contract for understanding and maintaining and monitoring the quality of the product they're producing. Generally, you're going to see this come in the form of random sampling. Say you have the right to pull 3 pieces off the line every 10,000 pieces. And you have the right to go in and inspect that once a year. These are the normal kinds of quality control things that you'll see in a licensing contract. Royalty and payments, always a big area of a licensing contract. The royalty percentage and the calculative process for that royalty. It's not always done the same, but generally you're going to find that if you're producing a brick and mortar type product, something to be sold in a store like Target, you're going to be in a royalty range of about 5 to 7%. And that royalty is going to be based on what's called adjusted wholesale or adjusted sell-in. That means that if I'm selling it to Target for $5, then I'm making a percentage, 5, 6, 7% off of that $5. But that's adjusted to accommodate for returns and spoilage and damage. So if I sell 20 of them, but 5 of them are returned, I'm only getting royalty based on 15. Performance. That's a really, really, really important area of the contract. Because believe it or not, there are some companies that license inventions solely for the purpose of keeping them off the market. So if you license your invention to someone and they say, wow, we're going to give you a 5-year contract, we're going to pay you 10%, we're going to do all that, and you're all excited, but you have no performance clause, then they can simply take it, put it on the shelf, and never produce it. They're out nothing. But by putting a performance clause in your contract, you're saying, look, I don't care if you sell 1 or 1,000, I'm getting paid for this. So regardless of what they sell, you're giving them a performance number to hit that they're paying royalties on. That ensures that even if they do put it in a drawer and never take it to market, at least you're getting paid. An audit clause is another thing to make sure that you have in a licensing contract. In an audit clause, what we're saying is, look, we trust you, but only so much. That means that once a year, I have the right to send my accountant in and look at the books. And I'm going to take a look at those books, and I'm going to see if there's really the math that's adding up to the royalties you've been paying me. Now, that sounds all well and good, but there are definitely some traditional caveats that you have to put with an audit clause. One is that you normally have to give them 48 hours notice. Some will ask for like a week notice or 10-day notice. That's not a very good idea to let them do. But you should be able to give them a 48-hour notice that you're going to send someone in to take a look at the books. Once you go in to look at those books, and of course that someone needs to be a CPA, and he's got to go in and look at just those books that pertain to the sale of your product. Anything above or below what they said they did in a variance of about 10% is going to be considered acceptable. Intellectual property. This is very important because a licensing contract is kind of a pseudo-assignment of a patent. It's saying I'm giving you a temporary ability to do something, and in exchange for royalties, I'm not going to come beat you up over it. But sometimes those licensing contracts by themselves and the work in development creates new intellectual property. You have to have a clause in your licensing contract that says, A, this is how we're going to treat existing intellectual property, and B, this is how we're going to treat new intellectual property. And of course, the last one is indemnification. What you're saying is, I'm going to indemnify you or hold you harmless for things that I've done, and you're going to hold me harmless for things that you've done, and we're not going to sue each other. It's really important to understand why we do some of these things and to make sure they're in your next licensing contract.